everybody, it's Joy,
And it's Tim.
and we are back for another episode of Live and Found, episode 38.
That's
Amazing.
right. And today we're talking about AI is already in episode 36. We talked about AI finding the decision point. And in 37, we talked about how it strengthens it. And today we're going to really talk about what happens when it totally understands what you are and who you are. So today's how AI navigates what it already understands.
Well, and I want to back up just a little bit about what it means because the research that we do is really making a person an identity for AI to recognize. And over these 37 episodes, we've talked about all the signals you have to give AI to make yourself an identity. And the reason why you want to do that is because AI wants to recommend people and not businesses. So we're into the space now that AI understands who you are. But that is a long process for AI to understand who you are as an entity or as an identity. So once it understands that, then what happens?
It's a process. It is a process. So we're really asking what changes after AI develops that stable understanding. So we've explored how AI develops understanding, and today we're really going to discuss what happens after that and what changes once AI develops stable understanding. One thing we have to realize is AI no longer treats every piece of information as equally uncertain. And when we think about that, we think AI talks about certainty, but really what it's trying to do is it's trying to find certainty by going through all the uncertainties. So before stable understanding, was searching for the answer to questions like, what am I looking for? What does this mean? How does this fit together to get an answer for you? What we're doing is we're establishing the baseline we've talked about a lot. But after stable understanding develops, the question changes. And that's the important part of what we're talking about today. It changes to how does this relate to what I already understand? And that's completely different for AI because the challenge is no longer creating understanding. The challenge becomes deciding where to begin. So imagine like moving to Colorado Springs, and this is how AI would act if it was a human moving to Colorado Springs, and this is how we act as humans. So, and I remember when I moved to Colorado Springs, every road was unfamiliar, every neighborhood was brand new to me, every route seemed, required me to really think about where I'm going and have I seen this before, and again, why am I lost again? Why am I going in circles? And if you've ever been to Colorado Springs, you know sometimes you can go in circles. But
We
after a little while, I no longer wake up wondering where everything is. I start navigating to it. So I know where I need to go to work. I know where the dry cleaners are. I know where everything's at. So my understanding has changed, and that's what's happening with AI. It's AI's understanding and its behavior is changing too. AI is going through what is not going through everything that it doesn't know. It's going through everything it does know. So what changes is how AI moves through it. So once AI has developed stable understanding, it stops spending most of its effort figuring out where to go and how to get there, and it starts spending more of its effort navigating on what it already knows. And that's why it's so important, like Joy was just saying, to build that trust up and to build through those signals to make sure AI makes a good decision.
Well, and that's what we're talking about for business is once AI knows to navigate through your things, the trust factor is there, the credibility is there. That's when the business really takes off in terms of being the referral channel. And it's not a firm, it's or a business, it's the identities within that business.
It's the
So
identity.
one of the things that we're trying to do, for example, is I'm building my identity with AI. I'm doing articles, we do videos, we do lives, but I want AI to know me. Tim's doing the same thing.
What we're trying to do is, and the term that I think best describes it is, we're trying to build pathways for AI. Once AI finds that pathway, it's really, again, going back to my Colorado Springs analogy, when I used my Google Maps, I wasn't asking, what is Colorado Springs? I now ask, where am I going in Colorado Springs? And so for AI, that shift is very similar. It's no longer asking what information exists. It's asking, where do I go first to understand this? And, for a long time, we did assume AI chose the, most trusted route. But what we're seeing may be something a little more different, because AI tends to begin with understandings that are easier. And we talked about that in episodes 36 and 37. And those become the strongest, and those also become the most available. Trust still matters, of course, but what trust creates is accessibility. And once understanding becomes established, it becomes easier for AI to reach, reuse, and navigate. So stable understanding creates those starting points that we like to talk about. Some understanding becomes easier for AI to reach than others. So it may not necessarily be because that person or business is the best, not necessarily because they are the only ones, but because they already exist as organized and reinforced understanding. So, like putting it at a human level, when someone asks Joy about a business or asks me about a business, we don't search through every memory we've had about every business we've encountered. We immediately begin with the strongest and most organized understanding and how that fits in and how that business possesses it. Then we expand from there. We talk about what they do and our experiences. And what we're seeing is AI appears to be doing very similar things. It's not going to go through every business it has. If you're asking for an attorney, it's not going to go through the mechanics to find an attorney. It's going to look through that starting point, that baseline, and it's going to work through those pathways for those attorneys. So a pathway is just a recurring route from question to understanding.
Well, and that's what we study is what are those pathways? It's different. We were having this conversation the other day. It's different for different industries. And that's why you have to be careful when you see all these offerings of businesses to find out your AI score, know your AI assessment. Let me tell you, every industry is different. And the reason why that matters is because AI looks at specific things for specific industries. So if it's not industry specific for AI, I don't know how you can trust that number. For instance, a doctor. A doctor has signals because they're licensed. A doctor has signals because they have an agreement with a hospital. That's another signal. A doctor has a specialization. A doctor does research, authors articles, all the things that are comprehensive to a doctor and his signals that he puts off is completely different than a plumber, a mortgage broker, or an attorney. Every industry has their own signals that AI refers to. So when you see all these companies that say get your AI score or get your assessment or however they promote it, just know AI is specific, and it's specific for your industry. So for attorneys, they're not going to do general search. They're going to look at legal directories, for example. And how many legal directories are there? Several. So it doesn't have to go out when the industry has their own categorization or their own industry resources that AI can go to get their signals.
Exactly, because AI is very rarely going to approach every question from every possible direction. AI tends to begin with understanding what it already has established and is easier to navigate. And that is why certain interpretations, businesses, people, concepts, answers may repeatedly appear. And it's not because AI is playing favorites by any means. And it's because they are becoming part of that navigation structure. They're becoming part of the pathways. Think of it like a street. If you most of us know that streets started out as pathways, and then pathways became trails, and then trails became gravel roads, and now gravel roads become streets. That's what AI is trying to do. They're trying to build streets. And this is a great analogy, I think, because it started out pathways are kind of bumpy and hard to navigate through. Streets should be smooth and easy, and sometimes they're a little winding, and we know that, but it's concrete, and that's what AI is looking for, is that concrete starting point that it can defend and keep working through.
Well, and I think the last thing that you just said is so critical, that it can defend, because if it can't defend it, it's going to skip over it. So that's why, and this is going back several episodes, like if it's not sure, if you're not clear, if it's not consistent over many different things, trust me, it's going to skip you, because AI has so much criticism that if it can't defend it, it's not going to say it. It's not going to give you that response, because it's trying to be more accurate, um, more accurate.
It's,
Period.
it's, it's trying to be more, and going back to the street analogy, it's trying to be more concrete. And that's why some pathways do become easier to follow. Like Joy was saying early on, what you're trying to do is create those solid pathways. Not if we know in cities, not all trails became streets, and not all trails or not all pathways in AI are going to become solid. And the more you can defend, and the more that AI trusts you, the more solid it's going to become. Now, um, we realize there's also, like any street in the city, and looking at and using that again, we know streets need to be maintained. There needs to be investment in improving them. They need to be continually being used, and that means more reinforcement. So you don't want to create doubt with AI and make it have to defend and figure out what to defend and what not to defend. You want to make sure that defense is solid and clear and smooth, like Main Street in your city.
Very good analogy. Okay, so how does this apply to future understanding? Um, I don't want to say long term because there is no long term with AI, but how does it play with future understanding?
Well, we've talked about it, and some understandings become easier to navigate because they are easier to navigate. They're more consistent. AI encounters similar interpretations repeatedly. They're more connected. What your ideas become more connected to your total understanding, more reinforced. What you say in one place is what you say in another. Your website matches your posts, matches your Google My Business, so on and so forth. And that makes you more available. And so that's the future. The future is to be more consistent, more connected, more reinforced, so you can be more available. And once you're more available, it's easier for AI to kind of grab onto you and use you as their baseline and as the answer. Because AI is not going to come back with a sheet full of answers. It's going to come back with the best answer and the best and the second best and maybe the third best.
Well, and you can track it too. I mean, I think, it- you know, once you start making those pathways with AI, you can track it with reporting on your website. So AI is starting to index you. So it's becoming aware of you and or your business. But then it goes to a point of using you as a resource. And that's when you're really in the conversation. And I'm not saying it's going to pick you as an answer, but you're in the game. So a lot of businesses are not even in the game. They haven't developed any pathways or signals or connections, but you can start tracking if you are getting on the field. And getting on the field means that AI is starting to index you, becoming aware of you, not trusting you. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't trust you yet, but at least you've gotten on the field. Once it starts trusting you, then you become a resource for AI. You can track that too. And then you start becoming, now you've opened the gate to becoming the answer. That's where the gold lies.
Right.
Because if you become the answer for a bunch of reasons, not just for business, but then you start the ownership space. So the person that wants to bump you off is going to have to do so much work. We've talked about it a bunch of times. Um, but establishing now those pathways and signals is the easy part in comparison to a connection that's already been made and trusted and relied upon and referred is a lot more work.
I think what to sum that up is really pathways really don't determine what AI understands, but they do influence how AI reaches for future understanding. So, like a street doesn't determine where you determine where you go. AI, but they do influence, where you start, what routes are easier to use, what destinations are easier to reach, and which connections are most likely to be made. That's how AI really looks at things too. Because once pathways have been established and existed, that's where AI begins its reasoning. It's where its understandings are easier to reach. Its relationships become easier to recognize, and those connections to information are a lot more likely to be reinforced. And that's important because AI is no longer operating in a completely blank environment anymore. It's found its point, its baseline, and it's wanting to solidify that understanding from the baseline so that you can be found.
Awesome. Okay. Any takeaways?
Well, I think we're going to go to the next step, and I think it makes sense that since AI doesn't start from zero and it doesn't evaluate every possibility equally, What's next? Well, what we're seeing is not, did AI understand this? What pathways existed when AI is looking for understanding is what we're seeing. And that's what we're going to talk about next time, is how are we going to take advantage of those established pathways to make it solid so you are the first choice.
Love it. All right. Then we will see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody. And tune in for how AI, how you leverage it to be the referral. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. How to make those pathways work for you.
That's what I like. All right. See you next time.